All right, welcome to episode 3 of Crushing Limits Unleashed. I want to make a special introduction here. We have a guest and a co-host, one of my best friends. His name is Chris Kirckof. A ton of accolades, former strength and conditioning coach, power lifter, bodybuilder. He's going to bring tremendous value to this podcast. And today we're going to talk about training techniques, training mistakes you see in the gym. So we're going to open it up with overtraining. So what do you guys see when it comes to programming and overtraining? Is there such a thing?
Man, that is it's such a tough question. I feel like this has become a topic though that people are like obsessed with, where they just where this was never talked about. I swear, if we went back to I don't know, like pre 2000, I'm not going to speak for, that was kind of like when I kind of came into training, but I would just have a feeling if we went back to the 90s, this was not a topic that was discussed. Where now all of a sudden, even though seemingly the volume that people do in the gym has gone down over years, somehow the thought that we're overtraining has skyrocketed. There's volume is going down because there's this rise of the love of low volume, but then there's the increase in we're worried about overtraining. And it's what factors are you considering when you're looking at overtraining? Because most people don't track their workouts. So are you losing performance in the gym? Do you even track any physiological factors, which usually are the most tried and true, but nobody will reference those? They'll just be I'm losing strength in the gym, or I can't recover my workouts, where it's what about your resting heart rate? Do you take that every day? Do you monitor your sleep? Do you check, you're monitoring your calories? There's all these different factors that nobody will discuss. They'll just be I think I'm overtraining, but they have no basis for why they're overtraining. So long story short, I would think that, well, yes, you can overtrain. I think that it's not something that most people are really finding themselves in a position for. Where what I've seen, which is more likely than you're quote overtrained, is that you've fried your central nervous system. And that usually comes from the people that lift way too heavy. They are still tied to, especially in bodybuilding, you're going in the gym and you're doing singles, doubles, triples of squat, bench, or deadlift still, and that's not congruent with your goal, and you're just destroying your central nervous system with these lifts that typically we see it with over 90%. So if you're doing over 90% of your max on a lift, which usually comes down to it's a triple, it's a single, a double, or a triple. It varies for people on what kind of endurance you have at that 90% threshold, but typically that will just rapidly increase the amount of stress that's put on your central nervous system. So that's why we always say your bodybuilding, most people believe that the best way to go about that is to train with reps. Typically they're higher, somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 12, now 6, 15. There's a wide range that one can argue, where I don't think most people will argue the efficacy of singles, doubles, and triples versus sets of 10 to 12. So I would say the bigger threat to me that I would see are the people that train too heavy, too frequently, and then that's where their progress kind of stalls from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And, we've all heard the term, you're not necessarily overtraining, you're just under eating, right? And especially too, as we've all done client programming, when we see what they're eating, even though they say, I eat a lot, Chris, trust me, it really doesn't seem to be the case. And then when we look at some of the food choices as they're kind of describing their typical day, a lot of those food choices are probably not the best for their goals. But what would you say you think on the topic, Stephanie? I mean, can you overtrain? I mean, have you ever felt like you've overtrained?
I've never felt like I've overtrained. And I've always done the typical 5 days on, 2 days off. So I do think that there is the benefit to rest days, just for recovery. But maybe could a person overtrain, they just love to do a certain muscle group so much that they're doing arms 4 times a week, and is that necessary? No. So maybe it's not overtraining to, like Kirckof was saying, where your body is overtrained, but you're doing unnecessary training. But I've never felt overtrained, but
Stephanie, this will be interesting. I'm curious, do you think that there is a difference in this topic between male and female? So I would think, and this is just my perception, is that I feel like this is a conversation that men, for whatever reason, they are carrying the torch of this like overtraining like myth, where women will go in, and I feel like they still do much more volume than men, and I never hear any of them ask about it, talk about it. So I'm just curious if you kind of feel like there's like a difference somewhere between. I don't know why. Maybe you could speculate on that too, but just what you think on that.
I don't feel like I hear a lot of women talk about it. And at the end of the day, a male, I mean, to get to the massive sizes of the big open bodybuilders, they do have to put a lot of weight on versus a bikini competitor doesn't. And also training style is just different for a female versus a male. For example, I don't do much for chest at all, just because I don't need a well-developed chest to compete in the division that I'm in. So that takes away a training day from a female where I don't need a chest day built into my program. I can touch on it on a different day. But overall, unless you're a female bodybuilder, maybe women's physique, you don't have to throw as much weight on to certain lifts to grow beyond your normal capacity, like a male would. I think females, maybe at times when they're so focused on the scale, they could be overdoing cardio.
I would agree with that. I also think there's a tendency, maybe, I don't even know if I'd use the word, like when I see some female, especially competitors train, I don't know if I'd use the word overtraining, but it's almost like overkill, meaning like we're not hurting ourselves, but we're also, we've 6 exercises ago on leg day, we surpassed, what we were going to get out of it. And now we're doing our third like kickback, like glute, adductor, whatever variation. It's like you've done 4 exercises for glutes, like we can move on, you know what I mean? Like I just feel like regard, I think it's like hindering, in terms of like overtraining. But
I would agree with that. I think some of the younger, newer competitors are so eager in the gym that they're there for hours, and that's overkill.
I will say, you have to like, there's a part of like, especially if you're getting a competitor, you better like love training. And so one of the things that I talked to Chris about this so many times, that I'll say like the number one thing, pick a program that you're actually going to enjoy. And so, you talked about mentioning like you train 5 days on, you take 2 days off, you see the there's obviously a benefit of rest days. And I see that too. There was a point, I feel like this is probably like 10 years ago, but I did like a 16-week diet, and I took like 3 days off of training the entire. It was like I went like 60 straight days at one point where I trained like, and I didn't care, but I was like, is this ideal? Probably not, but I like it so much, and I like being in the gym and training so much that this makes me happy. And so I don't look at that as much too, as like if you're dreading training, or you hate your program, or you hate how much volume you do, or whatever it is, these exercises, like there's so much variability in training that when people like pigeonhole themselves into, or corner themselves, into these little boxes of I have to do this and this way and that, and it's like that's not how it has to be. All training should be like one of the most enjoyable things that you do in the gym. You know what I mean? Like that was the first thing that I fell in love with. That's how, and Chris, our friendship is pretty much based around training. He just walked up to me in the gym one day and said, "Do you want to train together?" It's literally the conversation, not to go off on a tangent. Didn't introduce himself, doesn't, like, we don't know each other. No conversation, just walks up, "Hey, do you want to train together?" I'm so
It's true. Yeah, so we had known each other, like we knew of each other in high school, and so like we had crossed paths at some point. And then, even in the hallway in Duluth, I knew like, oh yeah, that's right, he went to Mayo and I went to Lourdes. And then I knew that I was starting contest prep, and I was like, I needed to take this serious. Like I need a training partner. So, and he's the
well,
first
I told you this.
person.
I didn't know you were doing. I didn't know you were doing. He didn't tell me anything. We like conversations like, "Do you want to train together?" I'm like, "Yep, okay, meet me here tomorrow at 3." And then we start training. And I feel like he went like 8 weeks probably before I even realized he was in shape, because back then, like, he's wearing like cargo pants and like a sweatshirt. And I feel like I caught him one day, like we used to have this thing where we're like, hey, we're gonna be there at 3. Well, I get there at 3, he's there at 2:55. And then the next day there, I'm at 2:53. You know what I mean? And like we keep creeping up. Well, I catch him in the gym one day and he's doing like crunches in the corner. I'm like, what are you doing? I kind of like make fun of him. He's like, something about training abs, just like whatever, pre-conscious of the show. I'm like, you're doing a show? Like I couldn't even, I had no idea that. So he used me as a training partner to get ready for a show, and he just kept me around.
I knew when he showed up early, I knew this was the right training partner. But yeah, that's a great story, man. Moving along. So yeah, I mean, because that other overtraining, I mean, we could go off on a tangent there, but another mistake to, especially to just onboarding clients is, we'll have clients send videos, or obviously we follow them on social media. They'll post up a video on their story or their feed, right? And then we critique the video. And I feel like, especially with how much information is available today, it's like everywhere you look, there's information, there's something to buy, right? I feel like a lot of people are still kind of missing the boat when it's proper form, and not necessarily, going for PRs or big weights. I think people just they're kind of seeing the end result. I want to bench 315, I want to squat 500, but they're just missing the basic when it comes to, performing an exercise correctly. What do you guys think on that?
That to me is so strange because I agree, but it's weird because I would think like before social media, like again, we go back to like early 2000s, 90s, 80s. If you watch training videos, you get like, somebody back when it was a DVD, they released their training DVD, or it was like a battle for the Olympia series. You watch guys train. There was I feel like a lot more momentum used in people's training, whether you watched them, you do a lateral or a bent over. There just was more like, there was more, there was more momentum. I'm not going to say like cheating swing. Like, I don't want to disrespect people. Like there was just more momentum. Where now there's like, again, there's like social media, there's like this rise of like absolutely like textbook execution reps, which again, like there's a spectrum of, on an exercise, how much momentum you use. But so it would seem strange to me that now people seemingly can't do things right when there is more, I feel like people are more sticklers for like form. And if you're posting the videos, then you're getting the feedback, although people will lie to you and just say, oh, great, great set, whatever. But it's like, as coaches, that's part of the hard part, I'm sure, for you guys, is to analyze what people are doing. They're training, they're eating, all these things. Then you have to be like, I got to explain something to you. You're not, doing this right in any kind of, realm of what we're looking for. But people just in general too, they struggle to take feedback. And I think that even people that once they've trained for any period of time, like even like trained for 6 months, somehow now they're like an expert. And people just really do, I feel like, have always, as a trainer, I've always felt like people have struggled to take criticism of their form, even if it's like a video and it's clear as day, like you are only going a third of the way down your squats. It's evident. We can pause the video. Here is where your hip is in relation to your knee, and somehow like their brain is like, no, I'm at parallel or I'm below. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it other than people are slightly delusional, and then they just struggle. And people do in general, not just in training, but they just struggle to take criticism.
100%. And like me and Stephanie talked about this a long time ago. And if you think about it, I can't think of one, maybe you can. But when you think of like bodybuilding and fitness and weightlifting, it's the only sport that I can think of off the top of my head where, just like you said, people are not open to criticism. So when I was selling personal training packages for years and years, I would walk the floor, introduce myself, try to, give a helpful hand. Hey, let me give you a quick tip. Let me show you something a little bit different you can do with this exercise. And it's funny, some of the responses you get, even if you're like extremely polite. And the thing is, like, I've never, this, you guys know this, I've never golfed in my entire life. I probably never will, but I know for sure if I ever decide to pick it up, I'm going to hire a golf expert because I don't know what I'm doing. So it's like, if I go to a golf course, I don't know the lingo. I don't know the clubs. I have no clue what I'm doing. But someone can join a gym pay, their $20 membership, and all of a sudden, oh, I know what I'm doing. I just read the instructions. I'm good to go. I don't need a trainer. You know, it blows my mind.
Well, it's also as simple as they watch somebody. You see, they'll watch somebody on social media, like, well, if I saw them do it, I must be doing it the same way. And it's like, did you watch? Did you record yourself? Watch it all, compare, because you will. I mean, if somebody is not watching you, it's almost impossible, especially like early on in your training, to be able to replicate, perfect form, especially on a hard exercise. Like I'll use bench over row. Like it's a tough exercise to maintain a position with your spine and then know how much momentum and flex am I going to allow. It's a hard exercise to do. It's hard to know on a squat how far you are going down unless you actually video it yourself, because your body will lie to you. I mean, it will lie to you about how deep you're going. It's going to lie to you about how many reps you can do. Like I tell you this all the time. Like I see the total difference now that I train by myself when I'll film a set. We'll use squats, film a set, and I'm like, I fail at, let's say, 10. And then I watch the video and I'm like, why does it look like I had like 5, 6, 7, 8 more in me when it feels like, I was a failure? So your body, your brain lies to you so much. And that if you don't have the feedback systems, the video, a coach, somebody, it's going to lead to failure on some level. It's going to lead to you, spinning your wheels and making so many mistakes that, inevitably can cost you. And with training, it's not just training, it's not just doing an exercise wrong that it's not giving you results. It's doing an exercise wrong now that's going to lead to injury. And I would say, like, if I were to make an appeal to any young new person that's out there training, especially now that I'm, a plus 40 like lifter, I'm just like, we're gonna desperately now just trying to hang on to the most that, the most that I can have. How strong can I still be? How big can I still be? How lean can I still be? And you see these, 20-year-olds, and they just throw weight around like tomorrow's a given for them in the gym, and it's not. It's absolutely not. So your form, your technique, especially for young people, because now it's not just convincing them that they have to do an exercise correctly. It's knowing that they're not going to listen to you when you say that, well, dumbbell bench probably activates more chest fiber than barbell bench. A good deep set of hack squats or pendulum squats probably does do more for you than, a back squat. It's just the way it is. But they're going to do these exercises. They're going to deadlift. They're going to probably bench, especially chest. Like, you just never get away from these things. So if you're not going to do them right, then there's a whole discussion of, warming up and actually showing up to that exercise properly. But just the technique, you mess that up, like, could be it. You know what I mean? You could lose, you tear a rotator cuff, you hurt your back, like, you could be out of the gym for quite some time. And in the prime, like, you may never recover from that. You may deal with an injury and it may linger with you forever. And knowing enough and I say old, I'm probably referring to plus 40, like, lifting, because you're getting up there in age in terms of like lifting. They will all say their number one regret is it comes back to some form of like injury management. Not to go off on a tangent, but it comes back to some form of, I did these exercises wrong when I was young, or I did too much of it, or too heavy, all the conversation that we're having, right? Or I didn't warm up right, or whatever. And it led to these injuries. And they'll all say, like, that was the downfall, or that was where my career either was hurt or where it ended. I was, 30, whatever. I was still kind of in my prime. And then I had a shoulder injury, a knee injury, hip or back or whatever. And that was it, in terms of at least maybe competing, because you can't ever train how you wanted to with the intensity. And like Stephanie said, you're going to get to a point where, especially if your goal is to be a professional or just compete at the highest level, like, you're going to have to push yourself in the gym. You're going to have to move weights that you didn't lift before. There's a progression to that. And if you get hurt, you have to come all the way back down to wherever that step is, first step, third step, wherever you're coming back to. It just can take so long. And again, like, injury may linger with you forever. So when people are young and they disregard technique and all these things, like, it's like a conversation that I feel like will never stop, because once you get older, you look back and we have these conversations, and a million people just like me will say the same thing. And then the young people just disregard it and shake their head. And then they wait until they're our age to be like, I wish I'd listened. I wish I'd listened to that guy.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'll just one more story. Just one more story, because I'll tell you this. Like, you didn't mention, I trained at Westside Barbell. And it's interesting because one of the things we used to, obviously, like, we did barbell bench. I think everyone has done it at some point. But like, first time we ever benched together, we came in and you're like, you just started with the bar. And I thought that was interesting. Well, then years later, I'm at Westside Barbell and I'm watching 600-pound raw benchers start with the bar. So if they're, if they're in that level and they're going to start with the bar, you don't need to be going in the gym and putting a wheel on, on the bar to start with.
Yeah, that's definitely a great observation. And that definitely it brings us to our topic. It actually a perfect tie-in. And you would definitely be the expert, I would say, out of the three of us, me being the most guilty of ignoring mobility work. I wish it, and it just like you said, it brings us back to where we would go in that UMD weight room, and it was just like it didn't matter what weight we used. We weren't going to get hurt. It just wasn't in the cards.
Yeah.
Whereas like now, if you don't warm up properly, it's not only going to be a bad lift, but you might have to skip the next leg day because of a knee injury or you tweak your back or something else.
I think
I,
it's, we're in a social media age and it's glamorous to lift the heavy weights and put that on, but it's not glamorous to spend 20 minutes stretching and doing PT exercises and things. Everyone just wants to jump right into the fun. And as Kirckof alluded to earlier, it can come back to you when you're older if you neglect those things when you're younger, myself included. When I started bodybuilding, lifting, I was just excited and I was getting strong fast. And I wish I would have been a little slower progressing the weights because I do have that nagging shoulder injury and it never goes away. I'm able to cope with it, but now I do my exercises and my stretches, but I don't like taking the time to do it.
I
Yeah,
think I have.
Kirchhoff will
I just
tell you
never
about
press stuff.
shoulder rehab.
Yeah. I know I'm always on you too. You get like a little ache or something. I'm like, all right, we got to do all these exercises. And I feel like I'm to the point where I could probably just like run a business for like PTing people back from like knees and back. I've had so many injuries that, I've just tried and true methods of like, what are you actually trying to fix here? But what's crazy is it doesn't take a whole long. Like now I have whole routines and I can come in here and be in here for an hour and do all these things for like my shoulder and my knee. And, like the knees over toes guy dramatically, I feel like help people that now people, know his program, the whole like walking backwards and you have all these different things. But for the most part, it's so simple. It's just so simple that if people would just take 10, 15 minutes before their workout to do some of these like prehab exercises to kind of get certain muscles activated or strengthened or lengthened or whatever the case may be beforehand, it would go so far. And for whatever reason, I don't know what it is other than you just don't want to do it, and I understand like you get in the gym and you just want to jump right to training or you're busy and it's like, I don't have time for this, but it just doesn't take long. I mean, I could talk for hours about this. You've heard my voice clips when you'd be like, oh, my shoulder hurts here. And then I send like a 15-minute voice clip about like 75 different exercises to do. Cause I'm just like, it's to the point where I'm like, you throw the whole kitchen sink at it and like, we can get you back as fast as possible. There's no like guesswork here. We'll just literally take every possible angle of this, injury and fix it. But just so little. Everyone skips it. You don't see anybody do this stuff when they go in the gym. You don't see anyone with like the bands, anymore doing like their rotator cuff stuff. And obviously those are like very simple. There's more advanced, much better kind of bang for your buck, like warm up exercise. But you don't see anyone do this at very best, like to come in and just start with like a light weight of, the exercise they're doing. And I feel like I've never been that way. Like even when I had people are young and you're supposed to have like joints of steel, like I don't feel like I could go in the gym ever and put like 135 on a bench or even like a plate on a plate loaded exercise for chest and start doing it and be like, man, my wrists, elbow, shoulder, everything feels so great right now. Like I feel like it's never been that way for me.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I don't know. I don't know if it's just getting the blood moving or just feeling like warmer body temperature, but yeah, I still even, just the other day we were doing incline barbell and I still started with the bar, the 25, the 45, and then I feel great. It's
Yeah,
and it definitely works as far as preventing injury.
100%.
Yeah, another thing too, that kind of ties in is, and of course we see it on Instagram, is ego lifting. And I try to take, so I give a free session to every client that we sign on, so that we make sure that we show them how to train properly. We show them, try to push past that pain barrier. And a lot of I think a lot of clients are surprised at some of the weights that I do, because I'm not super strong. I'm relatively strong, but I think a lot of the clients are used to kind of pushing heavier weight and just kind of disregarding form, or just kind of putting it on the back burner.
Yeah.
What do you guys see as far as, when it comes to ego lifting?
I definitely did it when I started. I was just hungry to be like the baddest girl in the gym. Um, and so I did the bodybuilding and I did the powerlifting, but you still see it with the younger generation coming in, and like everyone wants to get to 2 plates on bench press. Like you're not like an official lifter until you can do that, right? If you're a male. But so I see it a lot. I do think there's a benefit to challenging yourself to higher weights, but doing it within reason. And I learned that through powerlifting. Because I did train with people. I had, mentors. I didn't just walk in and try to do it on my own. But I think there's a benefit to trying to push the weight, but I do think there's a lot of people that also do ego lifting and they hurt themselves.
Yeah, at the end of the day, at least, for bodybuilding, our sport, it's going to come to, mind muscle connection, the feel, the blood flow, the pump, all that stuff. But we are wrapping down on time, so we're going to finish with, of course, we saved the best for last. And the final topic that we have is relying too much on machines. So, Stephanie, you want to start us off on the final here?
So I think machines are beneficial. I don't think there's a problem with them, but I do think there's a reason that our 3 major lifts have been around since the beginning of weightlifting, because they are also beneficial. I like to do a good balance of machines and barbell or dumbbell, because with the barbell or the dumbbell, you do engage your stabilizer muscles more than with a machine. But also, I need to remind myself at times that I can do the harder things, and I need to make myself do the harder things versus just, feeling a little tired today. Maybe I'll just go do the leg press instead of a squat. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah. I'm kind of torn on this one, because I feel like, first off, besides like loving training, Chris absolutely knows this, I love gym equipment. I mean, I'm in my gym right now. I absolutely love it. I'll sit here. I mean, at night I just scroll through like Facebook Marketplace. I'm like looking for like old school machines that are for sale. I read a lot about the history of like different gym equipment and companies, and I just love it. And I feel like machines, like, they just used to be made a different way. So like some of the newer machines, I'm not a huge fan of, where like they just, I don't know how they designed these, where like they did something different with like the bearings. And most people wouldn't understand this unless you have access to some of these older machines, to feel the difference between a machine that is belt driven or chain driven versus a cable. Um, there's just a different feel. And obviously, like plate loaded, I feel like changes the game. There's a lot of good companies out there make a lot of good machines, and machines can do a lot for you. And I feel like there's so many nuances to this topic, because part of using machines though goes back to staying healthy. So if your chest workout is flat bench, incline barbell, dumbbell fly versus you did Smith incline, a plate loaded press, a pec deck, whatever, like your risk of injury dramatically is going to go down probably with the machines. It ties back in probably to the ego lifting. You're probably more likely to do a heavier lift on a barbell than I'm going to max out this hammer strength incline, plate loaded press. You're not going to do that. You're likely to do lighter weight with more reps, better contraction on the machine. Although there's plenty of videos of people messing up machines and just, throwing it around. Who knows why? So I think that there's benefit to it in that regard. I think where we've fallen short though is, again, there's something where we've somehow dismissed the anecdotal evidence of looking at how people used to look. And I tell Chris this all the time, like, why do guys today, and I use the men, they just don't seemingly look like guys did from a few decades ago, especially certain body parts. So maybe where I'm going with this too is that machines can be maybe more beneficial for certain body parts too, where like I look at back and I always come back to back training, and back training, I mean, is it the most important body part up there with legs? I mean, the reason that people say a show is won from the back. And so now, and we laugh about it all the time, all these like weird back exercises that have been invented, like not just the machines, but like we're on one knee facing north with one arm, making, one arm lat pull down, like but we can't do pull-ups and bent over rows and T-bar rows and deadlifts anymore. Yet people that did those movements, the Dorian Yates and the Ronnie Colemans and the Jay Cutlers, we don't see these back developments anymore. We don't see a massive amount of width, just a nasty amount of back thickness. We don't see it anymore. So I lead back to, well, where are we going wrong? And I can only look at training. Where on the other side of that, I look at leg training and I'm like, there's so many amazing leg machines that are built anymore, where I think for most people, I've always argued that like a back squat isn't, I feel like, a great hypertrophy exercise for a lot of people. Like it's just, there's so many variations in how people's legs are built, their ankle mobility, that a pendulum squat or a hack squat, or I mean, I have 5 different leg press variations in here. There's like a horizontal, the standard 45. I have a vertical. Like you have all these different variations in legs that these machines that you just have such an advantage to, where you don't have to force yourself into the free weights either. Like if something feels better, you feel it in a muscle more. Like Chris said, this mind muscle contraction, you feel it more. The pump is better. Maybe soreness is a factor that you buy into, that you're just destroyed after you did, machines versus free weights. Then that's probably should tell you something. So there's a whole conversation that people should have with themselves on what they want to get out of their training. Why am I doing this? What am I getting out of it? Is it to mitigate the risk of injury? Do I believe this exercise will maximize hypertrophy? And you have to ask yourself all these questions, rather than I'm only doing this because I do this program and these exercises because this pro that I follow on Instagram, that's what they do. And I feel like a lot of people do that. Their training program and exercises and even rep ranges is based around just what they see other people do and list. And people will, list their whole workout now. They'll put a slide up with a video of every exercise they did. And then in the comments, it's the workout. And then people just replicate that. But without ever asking themselves, like, first up, do I have any part of the genetic material that this individual has? Am I on the same goal as them? Is this body part a weakness for me versus, I mean, there's just so many questions to ask yourself, and nobody does any of that. They just go in the gym and grab weights.
100%, man. Well, yeah, that's a perfect spot to wrap us off. That's going to wrap up episode 3 for you guys. Make sure you guys comment, subscribe, like, and we will definitely see you guys on the next one.